House Democrats are pressing Bureau of Prisons leaders on their plans to address longtime staffing shortages. For years, low staffing at BOP has contributed to operational issues and unsafe conditions across the federal prison system. A letter sent Friday to BOP's director says the workforce issues have reached a crisis point. Here with more detail is Federal News Network's Drew Friedman. Drew, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Terry.
What kind of information are these lawmakers looking for from BOP?
They're looking for a lot more detailed information from the Bureau of Prisons leadership relating to a lot of the staffing issues that they pointed out in this letter that they recently wrote. Essentially, they're looking for information related to some safety concerns at BOP. Those are stemming from low staffing across the agency. They're looking for how much BOP employees are using overtime hours and a process that they commonly use called staff augmentation, where they'll have nurses, teachers, or other BOP staff who are not officers essentially fill in to guard inmates. It's a practice that the agency uses to address staffing shortages and something that the lawmakers are concerned about here. The letter that was sent on Friday gives the BOP director a 30-day deadline to respond to a lot of these requests. And essentially, it's an investigation trying to deep dive into some of the concerns that they've been seeing and hearing from these staff members.
Well, back us up on those concerns. What have the staffing challenges really looked like at BOP over the last several years?
It's something where we've seen some of these concerns grow over time. For instance, with the use of overtime hours by correctional officers and other frontline staff. That's something that is fairly common just because there is low staffing levels across the board. So, for instance, over the last 5 years, the agency saw a 43% increase in how many overtime hours they've been using among frontline employees. And that's, of course, leading in many cases to burnout for staff, low morale, and even some employees who are choosing to leave the agency. And then, as I mentioned, the staff augmentation is another concern from these lawmakers, where you have the employees who are not officers filling in for those positions when there are shortages. So some of those workforce issues have led to other organizations, including the Partnership for Public Service, show that BOP is the lowest ranked place to work in their Best Places to Work series. It's been in that spot for 2 years in a row. It's also some of these issues have led the Government Accountability Office as well to name the management of the federal prison system as one of its high-risk list items. So this is something where it's gaining attention not only in Congress, but from other entities as well.
These trends have been going on and visible for a while now. Are there more recent changes that are adding to the stress at BOP?
Absolutely. There have, in the last year, been some changes to pay and also collective bargaining opportunities for employees. So, for instance, about a year ago now, BOP chose to reduce and in some cases fully remove some retention pay incentives. They said it was due to some budget shortfalls at the time, and that resulted in a 25% pay cut for some employees, somewhere between 10 and 25% pay cut. And some were reportedly starting to leave their jobs for other federal law enforcement positions that were higher paid, for instance, at CBP or ICE. And those retention incentives were restored in January, so earlier this year. So there has been, that shift back towards that. But I think that there's kind of bigger concerns about pay and having a permanent pay increase for the long run still.
Well, there is some legislation that's attempting to address some of those long-standing pay issues at BOP. Tell us about that.
There is a recently introduced bill called the Federal Correctional Officer Paycheck Protection Act. This is something that's coming from bipartisan lawmakers in both the House and Senate. And what it would do is create a permanent 35% pay increase for all frontline BOP staff. Union officials and other advocates for the BOP workforce have said that even though the agency tends to offer recruitment and retention-based pay incentives and bonuses to employees, those are only really a temporary fix to the pay shortages for these employees. So the idea here is to support a workforce that has had a lot of issues with recruiting and retaining staff, especially when they can see other similar types of law enforcement positions from other agencies or elsewhere where they can get higher pay. So the idea there is to try to give them something that's permanent rather than just temporary, and that can be taken away essentially at any time.
These kind of issues seem like they would be right in the ballpark for collective bargaining, but the agency recently canceled its collective bargaining agreement. How is that playing out now with all of these other things arising?
That's something where we've continued hearing from American Federation of Government Employees officials about concerns with the cancellation of collective bargaining. They say that not having that ability to collectively bargain or to negotiate with the agency is leading to some concerns about workplace safety and about the ability for employees to address any issues that they might experience day to day on their jobs. But essentially, if you look at the timeline for how that all happened, last September, the BOP director announced that the agency's union contract would be immediately canceled, and that covered about 30,000 federal employees with the agency. It's very similar to what we've seen across a lot of different agencies in response to President Trump's orders, telling most to cancel their union contracts. And so that's something where it really falls in line with this broader trend that we've seen. But for the BOP specifically, we've seen a lawsuit filed in response to that cancellation that's separate from the larger AFGE lawsuit, and they're alleging that the cancellation of that contract violated various federal laws. So it's something where there's still pushback against that, and it's still kind of playing out. But for the most part now, that is essentially canceled for these employees.
Well, this is such an important issue, and it's been so long running, Drew. So thank you for the update.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That's Federal News Network's Drew Friedman. And you can find her story at federalnewsnetwork.com.